Welcome back. It was a crime which pushed everything else off the front pages. 3 men, all known criminals, found shot dead in the Essex countryside. It was a cold-blooded, professional killing. The victims had many enemies, but which one wanted them executed?
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. One of the men jailed for the Rettendon Range Rover murders has been transferred to another prison after a plan of an airfield was found in his cell. Engineer Michael Steele is now at high security Whitemoor prison following the discovery, but is demanding a judicial review of the decision, claiming the document was sent from a pal planning to visit him. The incident related to a letter sent to Steele in 1998 while he was serving his life sentence at Full Sutton Prison near York. Steele, 57, and father of 2, Jack Womes, were jailed for the gangland murders at the Old Bailey in January 1998 following a 4-month trial. Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe were blasted to death with a shotgun as they sat in their car in a deserted country lane in Rettendon in December 1995. Steele of Great Bentley and Womes, 41, were arrested 5 months later and charged with the killings. The pair were jailed for a minimum of 15 years for the murder of Tate, 37, from Basildon, 38-year-old Tucker from Fobbing, and Rolfe, 26, from Chafford Hundred. But they have always protested their innocence, and now they have an officer from the Criminal Cases Review Commission probing the convictions. Michael Steele's wife Jackie said, "The document was sent to Mickey by a friend who was planning to visit him in prison and was going to fly up there with me. The airfield is close to Full Sutton Prison and has a registered runway. The letter was sent in 1998 and was vetted by prison officers and passed to my husband. Then, 3 years later, the authorities decided to search his cell and cease the plan and letter, claiming it was a sketch of the prison. It was a pack of lies and another chance to set him up. Michael was moved almost straight away, which he was furious about. There is no way he was planning to escape, and he has now launched legal action against the prison. He's getting a little bit tired of all these false allegations. We only found out 2 weeks ago that the document in question was in fact the airfield plan. In hindsight, it was a little bit silly for his friend to send him such a letter, but the prison authorities knew about it and didn't complain at the time. It's just not fair. The transfer means that both men are now at the same prison, with Steele holed up in the extra high security wing and Womes in the enhanced high security wing. According to sources, the incident in November came hours after mechanic Womes launched a bid to have a computer in his cell. Womes took his plea to a High Court judge but was turned down as prison officers raided Steele's cell in Full Sutton Prison. John Womes, who has led a highly publicised campaign to clear his brother's name, said, "Prison officers raided Mickey's cell and claimed they had found sketches of Full Sutton Prison among some of his legal documents." As this was going on, Jack was appealing to a High Court judge via a satellite link from prison to be allowed to use a computer in his cell. The request was turned down, and it seems very strange that at the same time these papers were found. The prison authorities claim Mickey had these drawings because he was thinking of breaking out and he was moved straight away. At the time, we believed these papers were planted in the cell to set Mickey up. There is no way that he was thinking of doing such a crazy thing. Ironically, both Mick and Jack are at Whitemoor now, although they don't see each other. A prison service spokesman said, quote, "We cannot comment on individual cases. Generally, the regime works in such a way that the possibility of escape is remote, and everything is done to prevent this happening. Whenever there is a case of a possible escape, an investigation is always held." The following newspaper articles from the 30th of the 4th, 2000, with the headline, "Jailed for life on the word of a liar." Workhouse Lane was suffused with the gentle sound of birdsong last week. The secluded farm track deep in the Essex countryside ran with ribbons of water underfoot after weeks of rain. The remains of a small bunch of flowers, brown and desiccated, now on a rusty field gate, was the only clue as to what was once a scene of unimaginable horror. In the first bleak sunlight of December the 7th, 1995, two men were tramping through the snowy fields near the village of Rettendon on the way to feed their pheasants when they came across a dark blue Range Rover where the lane meets open fields. Its doors were closed, but its sunroof strangely open. Through the blood-splattered windscreen they saw the slumped bodies of three men, victims of a cold and calculated massacre. Inside the car were Pat Tate, Tony Tucker and Craig Rolfe, local underworld figures. Tucker was a head of a security firm that controlled the supply of drugs in nightclubs across Essex and South London, with a sideline in debt collecting and punishment beatings. Tate, a bodybuilder, was Tucker's enforcer. Rolfe, shortly before his own death, had helped murder a small-time drug dealer who had crossed the firm. Each man had been shot through the back of the head so swiftly that they had no time to react, let alone retaliate. Rolfe's hands were still on the steering wheel and his foot on the brake. Tucker was holding his mobile phone. Tate took a bullet in the stomach to immobilise him before he too was shot in the head. Jack Womes, a local motor mechanic who had served time for insurance fraud, and Michael Steele, a known drug importer, were convicted of the murders in January 1998 and given triple life sentences. The conviction rested on the word of a supergrass. Darren Nichols, a paid police informer and drug dealer with convictions for dishonesty. Nichols told the court a compelling story of being the unwitting getaway driver on the night of the killings. He said he had dropped Womes off in Rettendon, then at 7 p.m, Womes called and asked to be picked up at the end of Workhouse Lane. There, Womes and Steele got into the car, dripping with blood. Nichols told the hushed Old Bailey courtroom, Steele said he felt like the angel of death. Womes and Steele have always maintained their innocence. Womes' brother John has campaigned tirelessly since they were arrested, but all of a sudden he has real hope. The first pebbles have rolled over the precipice, he says. Very soon there'll be an avalanche. New evidence suggests the story the men told of their whereabouts on the night of the murder is true, and that Nichols' account was the pack of lies he allegedly confessed it to be to a fellow Supergrass before the trial. This man, an inmate on the Supergrass unit at Wood Hill Prison, where all inmates are known as blogs to protect their identity, Nichols was Blogs 19, has now come forward. His name has been passed to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, which has the power to send the case to the Court of Appeal. Womes admits he was in Rettendon on the night of the murder, but says Nichols had asked him to fetch a broken-down car from the car park of the Wheatsheaf pub. New sophisticated telephone tests suggest Womes is telling the truth. Of 41 calls made by an expert using Womes' telephone along the length of Workhouse Lane, none connected to the sector picked up by Womes' call on the night of the murder. A third of the calls made from the Wheatsheaf car park did. The forensic engineer's report says it is rather more likely that he, Womes, was at the Wheatsheaf rather than Workhouse Lane. Chris Bowen, the solicitor who represented the men at trial, is so convinced their convictions were a miscarriage of justice that he is working on their appeal without charge. He said, quote, "Two men were convicted of a triple murder on the evidence of a man who was himself a suspect, a self-confessed liar, convicted criminal and dishonest police informant. Frankly, that is scandalous." Nobody denies there were links between the men. In 1992, both Jack and John Womes were sent to prison for helping a friend get rid of a car so he could claim on the insurance. They were sentenced to 16 months for a first offence. In Hollesley Bay Open Prison, John struck up a friendship with his cellmate Pat Tate and introduced him to Jack. After a fortnight, Tate and John were moved to another prison. Steele was also at Hollesley Bay, as was Nichols. They all lived in the Essex-Suffolk area and kept in touch. The Rettendon killings would have caused a sensation at any time, but the shootings came less than a month after the death of Leah Betts, the policeman's daughter who collapsed after taking an ecstasy tablet at her 18th birthday party. By May, 6 months after the murders, the police seemed no closer to the killers. John Womes believes it was desperation to close the case that led them to fall for Nichols' story. He said, quote, "The idea that my brother would shoot someone is ridiculous, but if he did, He would take one person and one person only with him, me. We did everything together. He'd never have gone with Mick Steele or anyone else. I know absolutely without question in my heart that he didn't do it. I will fight and fight till he gets out. Nichols was stopped that May, accompanying a friend who had £10,000 worth of cannabis in the boot of his car. Facing many years in jail, he began to talk. Before his story, honed in more than 20 often contradictory and confused statements, Womes and Steele had not been serious suspects. An intelligence report compiled in the weeks after the murder has 167 entries. Steele's name appears twice, with informants suggesting that he, as an associate of Tate, might know who carried out the killings. Jack Womes does not appear at all. Tucker, Tate and Rolfe were highly dangerous men. In his summing up, even the trial judge pointed out that whoever committed the murders must have been an expert marksman. Yet Womes says that though his father and youngest brother have licensed shotguns, the family lived on a farm in Suffolk, Jack was never interested. He's a mechanic. He's interested in how things work. When we were kids, my dad bought a clay pigeon trap. Jack was fascinated. He was pulling the arm round when it swung full circle and hit him in the neck and knocked him out cold. He's still got the scar. He never went near guns or clay pigeons after that. The brothers spent every weekend together, parascending off the back of a speedboat they owned jointly. I suppose people thought it was bought with drug money, says John, but my half is still being paid on the mortgage and Jack's was paid up when he sold his house. Darren Nichols is still in hiding. He has been moved with his family and given a new identity under the Witness Protection Programme. John Womes and Jackie Street still hold out faint hope that his conscience will get the better of him. There is no doubt that some of his statements were untrue. At one time, he suggested Steele had murdered Tate because Tate had told a group of IRA men that Steele had stolen money they had put up for a drug run. He did not know that the IRA men were really undercover police involved in an elaborate sting. On police tapes, he says of Womes and Steele, "I wanted them out of my life. I wanted to set them up." If you would like to learn more about the Range Rover murders, then click on the video in front of you now. You will also see the Essex Boys playlist, which has all of the videos concerning this case in one convenient folder. Many thanks for joining me for this video. I look forward to seeing you all again for the next one. Take care. Cheers.